Hello, cartoon fans. My name is Tony, and this is the first video I'm posting for you on my channel. If you're like me and weren't satisfied with how Adventure Time in Steven Universe ended, I think I can solve that problem with a little fan fiction I'm working on. I call it a rift in the multiverse. It had, it'll have all our favorite characters from classic and decent new cartoons from Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney, as well as Netflix and DreamWorks, all meeting together for one big world-saving adventure. Be sure to comment what you think at the end and throw a like. A Rift in the Multiverse, Book 1, Ooh's End, an Adventure Time story by Tony Batson. Chapter 1, The New Adventure. 30 years have passed in the land of Oooh since the defeat of the Vampire King and his royal court, and the curing of the Ice King and Betty from the power of Magic Man and the Ice Crown. One day, unbeknownst to the people of the land, under their very feet, a great mass of toxic waste thought to have been safely buried after the Great Mushroom War had spent all those quiet years gathering and festering long enough until finally, boom! A great geyser formed and erupted, releasing the toxic waste like an open wound, and began to rain down upon the land, spreading through and over the ground and through the air, permanently preventing the growth of crops and poisoning half of the forest's lakes and rivers and infecting those who drank from them. Excuse me, this is my cat Raja. She just wants some attention. And infecting those who drink from them or swim in them, and polluting the sky with a deadly and impenetrable smog of green poison. As the toxins travel along the ground, the neighboring kingdoms have become plagued, forcing citizens to abandon their homes and seek refuge in the Candy Kingdom as the only safe place left. Princess Bubblegum has Princess Bubblegum has invented the means to defend the Candy Kingdom and the increased inhabitants from the plague. Now she begins to wonder if it is enough. Have I done all I can to protect everyone? The shield protects us, but for how long? She pondered. She turned to her ever-ready but mysterious peppermint butler as he comes in with her daily chamomile tea and asked him in confidence, "Is the defense enough, Peps? Can it stand for an eternity?" Peppermint Butler was quiet as he looked at the worry in Bubblegum's eyes. He thought for a moment, then he responded in pure honesty to his worrying employer. "My princess, no mind in all of Oooh can devise the inventions you have, but the toxins have bubbled in the ground for many a millennium, and has matured to a point where it can feed on all forms of terrain, and has already infected the Slime Kingdom, the Breakfast Kingdom, the Fire Kingdom, the Lemon Kingdom, and now even the Ice Kingdom. Your shield has temporarily blocked it from our borders and kept all the infected ones away. However, even the strongest wall crumbles at some point, and at best the shield can last at least another 3 months." He did his best to sum up his final statement before speaking, then said with absolute assurance, "The people, however, are growing more discouraged, and our means of keeping the shield up are drastically dropping, as well as our means of feeding one another. It is time to consider a new plan that benefits us all." Bubblegum took one more look out her telescope at the shield and could see the growing mass of infected animals and people of the fallen kingdoms around it, and used the microscopic lens to inspect the shield and saw how the electrons holding it together were starting to lose energy. She then aimed the telescope at the ground outside and switched to the X-ray lens, and saw with utter horror that the toxin was close to breaching the kingdom's border. She then switched back to normal lens and to check in on the citizens of her kingdom and the fallen kingdoms around the protected area, and could see the worry in all their faces. She then turned back to Peppermint Butler and said, "You're right, Peppermint. Gather the princesses of the fallen kingdoms, Finn, Jake, and Marceline for an emergency meeting." Peppermint Butler did as she commanded. Hours later, Bubblegum approached the meeting hall and was met by her friends who showed great worry for her, since this was the first meeting she had called at the Candy Kingdom. Finn, now 35 years old and still wearing the same silly hat and mechanic and clothes, and had the same mechanical arm Bubblegum gave him after the events of his rock tower, walked up to Bubblegum and asked with concern, "What's going on, Peavy? You've never called a meeting this big, especially since taking in everyone after the event began." The princess looked at him, noticing his worry for her, and could not keep back her fear and concern, but maintained her composure, brilliance, and focus, and responded as she looked at them all. "This is a matter that concerns the future of us all, Finn, and I emphasize the term all. I'm glad you guys are here. I need your support most of all in this matter." The three looked at each other with worry, and Marceline said, "We have your back, Bonnie." Finn then said, "No matter what." Jake, looking a little fatter, also threw in, "Yeah." The four then faced the partly open doors and marched in. Bubblegum went to the front of the table, and as Finn, Jake, and Marceline took their seats, it could be noticed that Lemonhope, who became the new Earl of the Lemon Kingdom, was throwing paper airplanes at everyone. Lady Rainicorn and Breakfast Princess were gossiping, and Simon and Betty were comparing notes, while Wizard King, who sat outside in the courtyard due to his enormous size, was playing with three kittens on the floor under a window built big enough for him to see the meeting and reach through if he had to grab anything. Finn then caught sight of his girlfriend, Flame Princess, and they secretly blew kisses at each other and giggled playfully until Bubblegum arose from her seat to start the meeting and hit her gavel 6 times, which got everyone's attention, and all eyes then turned to her. "Thank you all for coming. This is the first gathering to take place in the Candy Kingdom, and the first we have had since recent events took place." Excuse me, needed a drink. Flame Princess raised her hand and asked, "What brings us all together, Bonnie?" Bubblegum looked to her new friend and responded, "I'm glad you asked, Phoebe. The reason I have called you all here is because this concerns our future. I have monitored the shield the last few years, and as I am sure you have all noticed, the growing number of infected ones has increased. But the real issue is the wall. The wall is starting to fail." Everyone gasped with shock. Bubblegum hit her gavel for silence. "Don't panic. It can last but only 3 more months. But the fact remains we can only last 2 with the number of rations we have. I have considered many options, but only one remains. We must leave Oooh." The whole room grew with shock, anger, and sadness to the idea. Slime Princess stated, "We have inhabited these lands for years. You cannot honestly insist we abandon them." Wizard King equally stated, "This is where we have set roots for generations to come after us. These lands surely can be saved." Bubblegum remained standing and tried to find the right words, but was too upset to say. Flame Princess stood and shouted with all her might, "Silence!" The whole room quieted down and listened. Bubblegum is right. The land is no longer sustainable, and we have lost loved ones to the toxin. Lady Rainicorn spoke using a new translator her parents gave her with a light and soft voice to match her accent. "I agree. We have to consider what is best for us all." Finn then stood and said, "Bubblegum has kept us safe for this long. She has never steered us wrong. We must hear her out." Everyone turned back to Bubblegum and waited for her to speak. "Thank you, my friends," she said. "I have also been monitoring the toxin itself, and the shield keeps it back, but not for very long. I take it upon myself to go on this quest to find us a new place to colonize, a place for us all to live safely." She then paused to hold back a tear, then continued, "I do not like it either, but this is our only option left to us. Will you all trust me on this? Everyone raised their hands and responded, I. Bubblegum then said, I will not return until I have found us a proper place. However, I cannot take this journey alone. Finn and Jake, can I trust you two to join me? Finn stood and stated, I will always have your back, Peepee. Jake then responded, Me too. The room was erupted with applause to the three for their brave decision. It is decided then, Bubblegum said. We will begin our journey at dawn. The meeting adjourned and Marceline took Bubblegum aside before they left with Finn and Jake. Sorry about that, had to answer a phone call really quickly. Now back to the story. The meeting adjourned and Marceline took Bubblegum aside before they left with Finn and Jake. Do you know what route to take? She asked. And Bubblegum looked at her and said, Honestly, Marcy, no. She smiled at her friends and then said, Fortunately, I do. Finn responded with surprise. You do? Marceline nodded and continued. When I first got my powers, a group of humans evacuated the land using the east coast past the Slime Kingdom. Bubblegum brought up her personal map of the land from the wall and placed it on the table in front of them and said, Show me. Marceline floated towards the map and pointed towards the coast. That is the one, she said. Bubblegum turned to her and said, Thank you, Marceline. That's where we will start. Finn and Jake nodded in agreement. Then Marceline surprised them when she said, You all know I am so coming with you, right? She said it with such seriousness they could not tell if she was kidding or not. Wait, seriously? Bubblegum said with surprise. As a heart attack. Can't let you dorks have all the fun, Marceline said with a teasing tone in her voice and her usual snarky smile. They all laughed, realizing the four of them had not done anything together since facing the Vampire King. Well, it wouldn't be an adventure without you, Marceline, Finn said with a smile, until the tenderness of the moment was interrupted by Marceline's adopted father, Simon Petrikov, knocking on the door to the room. Simon? Marceline said in surprise and noticed her new adopted mother, Betty, was behind him as well, and they both had concerned looks on their faces. What's up? I thought you guys left when the meeting ended, Bubblegum asked. Sorry to interrupt the conversation, Princess. We just realized there was something I needed to tell you before you all left tomorrow when we heard what Marceline said. Are you sure you want to do this, Marceline? You know we worry about you. Marceline realized she had not considered Simon and Betty's feelings to her leaving and floated over to her new family and gave them both a big hug. I'm sorry. I should I should have run it by you both first, and I don't mean to worry you. It's just that since things have happened, I haven't gone to explore in some time. And if they're really going to take the same route, I want to know if you, Betty, and Finn really are the last humans in the world. I know that sounds selfish, and I know we have Susan Strong, but she left years ago to regain her memories after her implant was reactivated, and we have no idea where she went. And I can't let my friend save the lives of everyone I knew alone. Marceline explained with sadness in her voice. Simon and Betty smiled at her and nodded. Marceline then hugged them both with joy. The others smiled at her and let the moment pass so Bubblegum could then ask, So what was it you wanted to tell us, Simon? And Simon turned his attention to Bubblegum after the hug with Marceline ended. Ah, yes, my apologies, Princess Bubblegum. It's about my studies of the crown. Everyone was quiet for a moment. Finn then spoke up and asked, What did you find out, Simon? Simon paused before talking. He then stated, I think it would be easier if we showed you. Simon led everyone to the lab Bubblegum built for him to better continue his research he had started before the Crown of Ice turned him into the Ice King. There he and Betty were able to study the crown closely and safely with the help of Gunther the dinosaur and Sven, whom Bubblegum and Betty were able to bring back to life after freeing them, and Simon from the crown's inner workings after reprogramming Betty's magic computer virus. And Gunther the penguin and the other penguins each also working in the lab. Simon brought everyone to a table where Simon and Betty had been studying the crown. The crown was hooked up to an entire monitoring system with wires hooked hooked into holes beneath the three power gems in the front and the top of the crown. Hello, everyone. Anything new today? Simon asked. Nothing much today. It was acting up last night, but it's being temperamental today, Gunther the dinosaur told Simon. Temperamental? What's Gunther talking about, Simon? Bubblegum asked in confusion. Well, you see, during the time I spent inside the crown and studied the mechanics with Betty's magic computer virus program, I began to learn some things, and this lab and system you provided for us, Princess, has been able to further confirm it, Simon explained. Confirm what? Finn asked in confusion. Yeah, lay it on us, Simon, Jake asked in excitement. Well, from what Gunther here told me about how the crown was first made by the greedy ice elemental Evergreen, he didn't realize that when he created it during the comet that fell to the planet that day that we now know thanks to your research into the Lich Princess Bubblegum not only allowed for the Lich coming into being, also gave birth to an entity that took control of Gunther when he put the crown on and wished to be like Evergreen, and was the same entity that took control of Sven, the one Gunther called the first Santa Claus, and myself as well. Everyone stood in silence with shocked looks on their faces for a moment. Then Bubblegum broke the silence with her usual disbelief in magic. So essentially, Evergreen managed to create a defective computer program that went rogue and warped your minds to the point that the identity of the Ice King was fabricated and mutated your DNA. So you all have the ice and electricity power. Electricity powers? Everyone then looked at Bubblegum with annoyance at her question. What? It's a legitimate question, Bubblegum said, standing by her beliefs. Bubblegum then said to Simon, You were saying, Simon? Simon cleared his throat and continued. Well, I have given much thought about the entity in the crown, and as we have studied it further here, we have learned much more about it than we did inside of it. And while what Bubblegum essentially said about how the entity warps the mind is true, it also has a connection to events that happened recently and will happen in space or here on the planet's surface. Everyone listened to Simon, but Finn became confused. Where are you going with this, Simon? Finn asked. Right. Sorry, I was prattling. What I mean is like what the entity did to send me the warning about the second comet that came all those years ago. We have been researching if the identity could tell us a way to save the planet, or at least buy us another month. Simon finished. Bubblegum, Finn, and Jake had helpful looks in their faces. Have you found anything? Like something I missed or a way to reverse everything? Bubblegum asked with hope in her eyes. Simon looked at the three of them, desperately wanting to tell them otherwise, but then looked back at the woman he loved and the children he took in, who all gave him an equal look, telling him what to actually tell them. Simon knew, being the man of logic that he is, he had to do the right thing. Unfortunately, the entity hasn't given any such information. Bubblegum, Finn, and Jake's smiles faded. Are you sure, Simon? Finn asked, hoping he might have been kidding. Did you double check everything? All your data? Bubblegum asked. And Simon looked at them, feeling frustrated, and tried to keep his temper from flaring, but the anger proved too much. What do you honestly think we have been doing in this lab since this nightmare happened? Simon asked in anger. I have studied everything I found before I spent an eternity with my brain fueled by stupidity and this despicable, vile obsession to violate innocent princesses. My wife and children I have spent days and nights waiting for an answer, but this entity hasn't told us anything other than. As Simon was about to make his point, the electricity started going haywire, and the crown began wobbling and glowing, and suddenly the wires were forced from underneath the power gems, which, after realigning themselves, released three huge beams of red light that began playing an image on the wall that showed a girl that looked to be 35 years old, and what appeared to be a cat with what could only be described as powers similar to Jake's. Both appeared to be wearing battle armor. The girl's had long bunny ears, and the cat's was designed to adapt to any shape its body changed to, and both looked to be fighting the same zombies attacking the dome outside. What the blob, Keek? These slime bags won't stay down and more keep coming, the girl said to the cat. I have no clue, Fiona, but I do know we can't let them get near the candy castle until Gumball gets it ready, the cat responded. Suddenly a holographic image appeared from both their wrists, showing a man with short pink hair and a crown similar to Bubblegum's, who then said, It's almost ready, girls, but you two need to get out of there now. Air rescue is on the way, the man told the girl and the cat. The image disappeared and they both looked up, and another man flew down in similar armor and lifted them both in the air before the zombies could swamp them. Somebody call for the rescue helicopter of love, the boy said with a snarky voice which made the girl laugh and blush. Not the time, you two lovebirds, the cat said, snapping them back to reality. Soon they disappeared from the image, and then several beams of light blasted the zombies. The image then disappeared, and everyone stared at the wall with confusion, all except for Simon. I had meant to mention that the entity keeps showing different images like that. All with those same characters, he explained. Weren't those the characters from the fan fiction you created all those years ago? Finn asked Simon in confusion. That's right, Simon said in response. At first, after you all freed me from the crown, I dismissed the old books I wrote as mad ravings from my days as the Ice King. But as we studied the crown, it began projecting them at first once a day. Then, when everything started happening more frequently, and with the same zombies trying to attack us outside, Simon explained. Everyone was silent trying to process this. Then Bubblegum asked the burning question. How? Simon brought out his early work he had before the ground possessed his mind along with the new data. He and Betty started collecting the last 30 years and placed it on the center table. It didn't make any sense to us either, Simon started to say, until I started looking back at the legends first written about the crown and anything surrounding artifacts similar or related to the crown. And when I did find something, I made sure everything added up and correctly coincided with why we saw what we saw, Simon explained. From what I can tell, the images were projected from what I can only describe as a sort of sibling to the crown of ice, a sister, if you will. Everyone stared at him in silence for a moment. Then Simon continued to say, I realize it doesn't make sense, but I looked over the notes I wrote about the crown and everything Gunther and Sven told me they remember learning before putting on the crown. And I compared it all with what Princess provided me from the mystical artifact section of her library before it was lost in the first attack. And after tearing through several books, I found several legends about another ice crown created just a few years after the first one was made. How, I am uncertain. What I do know is that it matches the crown worn by the being in the stories I wrote known as the Ice Queen. Everyone listened to Simon silently. But how has this crown been receiving signals from its sister from wherever the Ice Queen is? Jake asked. I researched that and learned the Ice Tiara, as history has named it, is made of the same material as the crown of ice. But where the power gems came from and how its magic was corrupted, I have no idea. But whatever wish magic powers it is sending signals to the crown of ice. And it looks like the people there are facing the same crisis we are, Simon finished. Everyone was silent for a moment. Princess Bubblegum thought for a moment, long and hard. How much time do they have? She asked with concern in her voice. Simon looked at the notes he had made since the apocalypse began. They have the same defenses for now, but like us, they are down to 3 months, Simon said with regret in his voice. Bubblegum, Finn, Jake, and Marceline became extra concerned. Then we need to help them too, Princess Bubblegum stated. By any means necessary. We can't leave them to suffer as we have. another human like Finn, an animal with Jake's abilities, a boy with Marceline's abilities, a prince of mine and my brother's caliber, and any people they have left surviving in their land. We must help them and bring them to a new land with us. Everyone nodded in agreement. Simon, can you find some way to trace the signal to where it originates from? Princess Bubblegum asked. I believe we can, Princess, Simon said in response. Thank you, and thank you for bringing this to our attention, Simon. Bubblegum said as they shook hands. Then she, Finn, Jake, and Marceline left Simon's lab and returned to their rooms to begin prepping for their journey at dawn. And that's the end of chapter 1. If I've captured your interest, please be sure to check out the story I have posted on DeviantArt under the name Fanfic Writer 2021, Fanfic Writer 21, and on fanfiction.net under the name Fanfic Writer 4 million. And please be sure to leave a comment and a like to tell me what you think. Thank you. Have a good day.